Some staircases cost more than the average American home, not because they're made of gold, but because they're engineered to change your pulse. I still remember the first time I stepped into a foyer with a 40-foot ceiling. My eyes were forced upward, my breath hitched, and for a split second, I felt utterly insignificant. That wasn't an accident. That feeling of smallness is the product of a multi-million-dollar psychological blueprint. For the ultra-wealthy, these aren't just entrances. They are silent, structural declarations of power, designed to win a negotiation before you even shake hands. The price of a first step. Most people see a staircase and think about getting from floor A to floor B. A billionaire sees a staircase and thinks about emotional architecture. They aren't building a way to get upstairs. They're building a machine designed to harvest a specific reaction. This is why a single foyer can cost more than an entire zip code. These spaces aren't modeled after living rooms. They're modeled after cathedrals and sovereign courts. Because for the ultra-wealthy, that first step across the threshold isn't a greeting, it's a preemptive strike. It's a silent message that costs millions to send, but pays for itself in the leverage it creates. When I tour these properties, I don't look at the kitchen or the view first. I look at the entrance. It's the only room in the house that tells you exactly how the owner wants the world to perceive their soul. The psychology of diminishment. Billionaires don't build these cathedral-sized voids just to showcase their bank accounts, they build them to hijack your nervous system. Human psychology is hardwired to react to scale. When you step into a foyer where the ceiling vanishes into the shadows and the staircase spiraling above you costs more than your entire life's work, your brain does something involuntary. It retracts. You don't just feel small, you feel subordinate. Your posture stiffens, your voice drops an octave, and your confidence begins to leak out onto the hand-polished marble. I felt this shift viscerally when I had the chance to visit Buckingham Palace, that primal, instinctive urge to straighten your spine and lower your tone simply because the room feels more important than you are. This isn't an accident. It's an ancient architectural weapon. It's the same theology of space used by emperors and high priests to enforce humility before a single word of dogma was spoken. Jeff Bezos didn't just renovate his Beverly Hills estate. He engineered a moment of arrival designed to force guests to subconsciously acknowledge they've entered the orbit of a different species of power. Mukesh Ambani's Antilia doesn't just use foyers to welcome you. It uses them to overwhelm your senses until your personal importance hits zero. Even Steve Jobs obsessed over Apple Store entrances because he knew that the first 3 seconds in a space can rewire a person's emotional state. These aren't decorations, they are atmospheric levers. They flip the power dynamic before the host even enters the room. But here is the secret the architectural digests won't tell you. These spaces aren't just designed to shrink the guest, they are designed to inflate the owner. Behind the 5-ton chandeliers and the gravity-defying stone, there is a profound, expensive insecurity. Even at the top of the Forbes list, there is a craving for validation so deep it requires a 40-foot ceiling just to contain it. These foyers don't just dwarf the visitor. They're the only things big enough to make the billionaire feel as large as they want to be. And once you see the marble as a crutch for the ego, you can never go back to calling it decor. The ROI of an emotional impact. To most of us, spending $5 million on a foyer sounds like clinical insanity. But to a billionaire, that isn't a cost, it's a capital expenditure in influence. They aren't paying for square footage, they are paying for the exact microsecond an investor, a politician, or a rival CEO realizes they are no longer in control of the room. It's about communicating absolute dominance without uttering a single syllable. Warren Buffett famously said, "Price is what you pay, value is what you get." In this world, the value of a shattered ego is immeasurable. This is where the ultra-wealthy think on a different frequency. They aren't buying a room, they are buying the submission it creates. They are investing in a world where their vision is the only one that matters, and $5 million is a small price to pay for a room that does the talking for you. The commodity of uniqueness. In the stratosphere of extreme wealth, money is the baseline, it's no longer a differentiator. When everyone in your circle owns a Gulfstream and a super yacht, The only true currency left is scarcity. This is the obsession driving Mukesh Ambani's Antilia. One of the most expensive private residences on the planet doesn't just have a foyer, it has a gauntlet of them. Each one is a curated assault of different materials, lighting, and cultural symbolism. He didn't build them because he needed more places to hang his coat. He built them because, in a world of carbon copy luxury, being unforgettable is the ultimate power move. Billionaires aren't chasing comfort, they're chasing distinction. At this level, a staircase ceases to be a functional object and becomes a structural signature. A foyer isn't a room, it's a three-dimensional personal brand. They are building monuments to the idea that they are one of one in a world of many. They don't just want you to see their wealth, they want their home to be the permanent mental wallpaper of everyone who enters it. Geology as status. To the uninitiated, marble is just cold stone. But in the world of the 0.1%, materials aren't chosen for their color, they are chosen for their pedigree. They don't want stone, they want Italian Calacatta extracted from a specific vein that took 190 million years of geological pressure to perfect. They want onyx that doesn't just sit there, but glows with a translucent, inner light that feels almost supernatural. These aren't just finishes, they are geological trophies. When Mark Zuckerberg renovated his San Francisco estate, he didn't just hire contractors, he commissioned rare breed artisans to revive old-world techniques that the modern world has largely forgotten. This isn't about necessity, it's about resource dominance. By sourcing rare woods harvested under conditions so strict they border on the impossible, they are sending a clear message to every visitor: I have access to the finite. These materials are the ultimate flex. They tell the world that while you might be able to buy what is manufactured, they can buy what is extinct. Structural arrogance. The most expensive staircases on the planet don't derive their value from what they are made of, but from the laws of physics they choose to ignore. Billionaires have moved beyond simple opulence. They are now investing in engineering as a form of structural arrogance. We're talking about floating stone slabs that appear to hang in mid-air without visible support, and glass treads so chemically strengthened they can support the weight of a sedan while remaining perfectly transparent. These aren't carpenters' projects, they are aerospace-level puzzles requiring tolerances measured in microns. Look at the glass staircases in Apple's flagship stores, monolithic structures funded by the deepest pockets in corporate history. Steve Jobs didn't just want a way to get to the second floor, he wanted a transparent miracle that felt like walking on air. He understood that when you force a material like glass to do something impossible, you aren't just building a stairs, you're projecting absolute control over the physical world. Billionaires obsess over this level of engineering because it transforms a residence into a living piece of structural art. It's a subtle, high-tech reminder. If they can make 10 tons of marble float, imagine what they can do to a market. The invisible army. But there is a quieter, more clinical cost to these spaces that the blueprints don't show: the erasure of the human element. A 30-foot foyer of white Calacatta marble or hand-polished glass is a high-maintenance battlefield. It is a space designed to look as if it has never been touched by a mortal hand, yet it requires a silent, invisible army to maintain the illusion. In these homes, the foyer is a war against reality. There are crews who polish the stone in the dead of night so the owner never sees a single footprint. There are climate control engineers who ensure the humidity never fluctuates by a fraction of a percent. Because in a room this size, a single hairline crack in a rare wood panel isn't just a blemish, it's a $100,000 failure. Billionaires don't just pay for the room, they pay for the absence of life. They want the space to feel as though it emerged perfectly from the earth, untouched and unbothered by the messiness of existence. The ultimate luxury isn't just owning the marble, it's the power to ensure you never actually see the person cleaning it. The theater of power. For the ultra-wealthy, the foyer isn't an entrance, it's a proscenium arch. It is a stage where the first act of every social and political drama is performed. Take Oprah Winfrey's estates. Her entrances aren't just grand, they are masterclasses in curated warmth. They are designed to disarm the most powerful people in the world, CEOs, heads of state, and icons, using a precisely engineered atmosphere. This isn't interior design, it's set decoration for the ego. A grand staircase in these homes is rarely used for climbing. It's a vertical stage for charity galas, fundraisers, and the power descent. It's the backdrop that ensures the host is always the focal point, framed by light and shadow that has been tuned by consultants to mimic the golden hour of a film set. Every reflection in the antique glass and every beam of light hitting the curated art is a calculated move. In this theater of luxury, the billionaire isn't just the homeowner, they are the director, the lead actor, and the audience. They've built a world where they are the only ones who know the script, and the foyer is where they make sure you never forget your lines. The architecture of ascension. There is a reason the ultra-wealthy obsess over verticality. In the psychology of power, height is a proxy for hierarchy. When a billionaire commissions a 30-foot ceiling, they aren't just buying air, they are buying a physical representation of their own ambition. They understand that when the human eye is forced to travel upward, the brain subconsciously associates that movement with divinity and supremacy. It's a biological reflex. To look up is to acknowledge something greater than yourself. These foyers are designed as cathedrals of achievement. The sweeping staircase isn't a way to reach the master suite, it's a frozen metaphor for the climb to the top of the food chain. By forcing you to crane your neck, they are subtly reminding you of your place on that ladder. It's the architectural equivalent of standing on a pedestal. They build these voids to ensure that from the moment you cross the threshold, you are in a state of perpetual looking up, literally to the ceiling, and metaphorically to the person who owns the sky above you. The monument complex. At a certain level of wealth, you stop buying things for your own lifetime and start buying for the next 200 years. Many billionaire families don't build these foyers for their daily commute. They build them to defy their own mortality. Look at the Walton family, the architects of the Walmart dynasty. They don't just build luxury homes. They commission fortresses of heritage designed to outlast their own DNA. A handcrafted stone staircase doesn't age, it endures. It's a deliberate middle finger to the passage of time. When a billionaire drops $10 million on a foyer, they are purchasing permanence in a world of planned obsolescence. They are creating a stage where their great-grandchildren will negotiate their own legacies. This isn't about beauty, it's about territorial marking. They want their milestones, the weddings, the political deals, the succession handovers, to happen within walls that bear their name long after their pulse has stopped. For the ultra-rich, the foyer is the only part of the house that isn't a room, it's a mausoleum for their relevance. They aren't just building a house, they are building a monument to the idea that they were never really gone. The narcotic of arrival. Strip away the engineering and the tax-evasive price tags, and you're left with the only thing billionaires can't mass-produce, an original emotion. The world's most expensive entrances exist to facilitate a single, intoxicating moment, the feeling of stepping out of the mundane and into the extraordinary. It's a sensory transport, a total immersion into a reality where physics, budget, and logic are all secondary to the owner's whim. Billionaires chase this feeling not because they lack for comfort, but because they possess the godlike power to manufacture awe. When you have the resources to bend your environment into any shape you desire, a foyer becomes more than a room, it becomes a manifesto of the impossible. It's the ultimate indulgence, creating a space so breathtaking that it forces even the most jaded critic to pause. Even now, after years of touring the world's most elite zip codes, that feeling hasn't dulled for me. Whenever I step into a foyer that truly pushes the limits of structural art, I get that same visceral shock, the feeling of having left the known world behind for a moment, standing in a space where the only limit was how much of a dream the owner could afford to build. The message behind the marble. Some staircases cost more than a family home. Some foyers cost more than an entire zip code. But at this level of the game, the price is just a byproduct, it's never the point. The point is the frequency of the message. These spaces aren't just architecture, they are structural manifestos. They don't just house a person, they broadcast a status. They are a permanent, physical shout into the void that says, I have conquered the chaos of the world and replaced it with a reality of my own design. For the billionaire, the foyer is the ultimate declaration of self. It tells you exactly who they are, what they've built, and how far they are willing to go to dominate their surroundings. It is the only room in the house that serves no purpose other than to be unrivaled. And for the person who has everything, that silent, marble-clad realization that they have built something truly unforgettable is a message worth every million. Because in the end, you don't build a cathedral to live in. You build it to be remembered. If these architectural monuments intrigued you, there's a reason for that. This video is produced by Richest Billionaires Homes and is intended for entertainment and educational purposes within the luxury real estate niche. All audio, commentary, and informational content are original and created by our team through human research, writing, and editing. Select visual references may be sourced from publicly available materials, as well as digitally conceptualized architectural imagery used for illustrative storytelling, and are included under fair use guidelines to support narrative and analysis. In accordance with YouTube's transparency guidelines, this video contains synthetic elements as disclosed in the video settings. We do not claim ownership or representation of any third-party brands, properties, or entities featured. No infringement is intended. At Richest Billionaires Homes, we don't just showcase properties, we sell a dream and tell a story. Our mission is to narrate the lifestyle, the vision, and the legacy behind every billionaire's home. We believe in tell, don't just show, because every space deserves a voice, and every detail speaks to a life well lived. The original stories we share here aren't found anywhere else on YouTube or social media. That is our brand guarantee. They're crafted by real people to inspire, captivate, and elevate your imagination.